After playing my little trick on the king and queen and getting a hold of these young ones, I made sure that the control collars that were on them were completely tossed aside. As each of them continued to fill their mouth, I walked up and I saw the young boy that was there. He looked kind of mostly humanoid, but he had some features on him. Honestly, he had the ears of a polar bear, of all things. They weren't quite on the very top of his head, but more off to the side. His head was a little bit more narrow than a human's would be, but aside from that, it was pretty much human all the way around. I looked over to him, and as I reached for him, he flinched away immediately and started to clamber away. I knew what this meant. I had to simply tell him, "Don't worry, I can heal you. That's what I'm gonna do." It took one of the other ones, a fox girl, I think they call them konsunes, called Shara, to actually hold him and comfort him while I reached over. I put my hands on the side of his face that had been bruised, and then reached over to his wrist, making sure I had two connections, because I'm pretty sure I would need at least one, but two is better. I began to go through his body, making sure that any damages were fixed, and the damages I found made my heart drop to my ass, and immediately wanted me to vomit all over the place. It was horrible. This kid, because he wasn't human, they had beat the living dog piss out of him and held him down to do bad things. But thankfully, this boy didn't seem like a boy either. As I fixed up the side of his face and made sure he wasn't having any swelling or bruising, I took a peek at his DNA. Turns out, the alteration that I had done to the queen had been done to him, just at a farther extent and much more complicated. It was like the difference between doing simple math and doing advanced calculus. This was extremely difficult to figure out. I'm sure if I looked inside my own DNA, I'd probably find the same thing. Thankfully, I would find out later that the polar bear kid named Keen, after he realized that I had fixed him and was much more receptive, had actually fought off his attackers, which is why they beat the crap out of him so much. I guess they figured if they beat him too much, he couldn't be sold, so they kept him in mostly one piece. I'm sure he was just glad that he could see out of that eye that was pretty much swollen shut. As everyone continued to eat, I introduced myself to them and told them what I could do, as if they hadn't already figured it out. And then said, "Okay, well, since I'm pretty much going to be in charge of you all, I'm going to need to know who you are and what you can do." With that, they all kind of looked at me strange and then looked at each other. It was though I had just asked them for their body count or something. Something very, very personal. But many of them simply nodded and understanding. The kitsune girl that was holding him immediately piped up and told me that she was able to teleport things. She was able to move herself a little bit here and there before they were able to get the collar on her. It turns out that the other kitsune girl, named Xena, could teleport as well, but just not as far. And they also did a little experimentation, and it seems as though that they could teleport small objects as well. This was going to be amazing, although I didn't know how far they could use it. Just knowing that they could teleport things was definitely something of note. With that, as Cheryl held on to Keen, he looked over and simply picked up a small bowl that was on the table, and in his hand he morphed it, transmutated it, from a bowl to a cup, then to a sphere, and then back open again to a cup, and then he molded it into a type of butterfly or moth. I was amazed at this. Everyone was amazed, as everyone looked on, and then he simply put it down on the table. Others picked it up and looked at it. It was solid in its new form. He simply stated, "But I can only do that to non-living things, not anyone like you." "Hey, we're two in the same, my friend," I said to him. "Believe me, what you can do there is very impressive." He seemed to grin at that, and his ears flickered a little bit. I didn't know if that was him just flicking a fly or him being happy that I give him a compliment. As I went around the room, I found that there was another dragon girl. Renesia had heat and lightning, so I kind of figured this new one, Turzek, was able to do the same thing. I kind of had to chuckle at the name a little bit. I almost had to roll my R's to say the name Turzek. But she said, please don't do that. Especially as we had two, feline females, I should say, down the way. Turzak was also able to do heat and lightning, and I realized that since both of them had wings, using heat and lightning would allow them to travel extremely quick. Teleportation is instant, of course, but Lord knows how much that can be used, how often, and how much power it used. We had no idea. Right next to them, as I went down the line, was a woman who was completely pale. God, she was pale. The papers in my notebook aren't as white as this woman's skin was. And she looked so delicate and so proper, even though she was still dressed in rags. I thought for a moment, looked at the door, and wondered when the clothes were going to get here. But then I simply asked her for her name and what she could do. She said her name was Line. Yes, as in the line on your paper. I kind of chuckled a little bit about that, and she looked at me strange, not figuring out why that was so funny. Come to find out, she was one of them snow chicks. Cold and ice was her thing. She actually went over to a glass of water and simply changed the center, and just the center, into ice. Turns out she actually came from another magical world, but she couldn't figure out why her clothes basically fell off her when she got here. Not that anyone actually stripped her, but she actually slid out of her clothes. How she had become so small. I then told Turzak to actually take her over to the mirror, and please don't break the mirror because I don't want glass on the floor. When she looked and realized that she had rejuvenated, become young like the rest of us, she was immediately flabbergasted. Apparently, for her species, this is a big deal. They're not taking any sort of serious while they're that young. I kept going down, and next was two cat girls, one named Meadow and the other one named Leaf. Yes, I chuckled a little bit on that one as well. Come to find out, their abilities, amongst their heightened senses for being felines, at least feline-ish, was the fact that they had an ultra-awareness. This ultra-awareness allowed them to see things throughout the entire castle. When they put their heads together, literally, they were able to stretch even farther out, but this seemed to be painful and seemed to burn through their energy reserves very quickly, as when they stopped doing it, Leaf just about fell over. All I could think was, falling Leaf? Oh, jeez. Next to them, I was surprised to see a woman with doggish ears on, which was hard to tell because when she had them down, they seemed like floppy ears, but they did stick up just like catgirl ears. However, she did have that puffy dog tail, which was easy to confuse for the Kitsune girls down the way, but the Kitsune girls both had completely black hair. This dog girl, it was brown, light brown, like a golden retriever. I really had to fight the urge to walk up and go, "Who's a good girl? Who's a good girl?" Come to find out, she has an ability with the earth and plants. We wanted to know what it was, and she didn't have anything to work with, so we would have to look at that later. And finally, next to them was a surprise to all of us. That was Hana. Yes, I had to say it that way. Hana. It's not Hannah, it's Hana. And she was a Lamia girl, part snake, which surprised me because she actually has hips. It was amazing, just surprising to see that. She very lightly explained how that, this is kind of her species' way of, still reproducing. I didn't need anything above that. As it turns out, not only did most of them look human, but it turns out their internal components were pretty much the same. When I looked through Keen and fixed his face and checked his DNA, I also checked his organs. They were pretty much where they were supposed to be. The kidneys were a little low, and the liver was on the wrong side. But aside from that, everything was where it was supposed to be. I was surprised, totally amazed. And as we finished up, I could see two girls immediately lurch their eyes towards the door. The two cat girls with their ultra awareness. I'm going to have to get used to this. It's like being around Spider-Man. And the door slid open. And then a bunch of women came in. Why they take those tiny little steps, I still don't know. But they came in with their heads down with all sorts of brand new clothing. With that, I told the girls by motioning, go and get dressed. Hey, ladies, I said to the ones who brought the clothes in. They looked up. Did you bring any type of water for them to clean themselves up with? With that, the ladies looked at each other and were seemingly embarrassed and bowed constantly, saying how they were sorry for not knowing, not understanding. I was confused. I said, don't worry about it. Just please go get some. Thank you. They looked at me weird for actually saying please and thank you, expecting me to act like some sort of feudal lord, I guess, to just scream orders. Seriously, I might have had a rank back in the day. I don't now. Who am I to give orders? Although, given the situation, that might have to be the case. Thankfully, just a few minutes later, the girls were actually sorting through the clothes, not knowing surely how to put them on exactly, while they got fresh water to bathe themselves with. With that, a few of them started to remove their rags, and I said, whoa, hold on, I'm gonna go out there, as I pointed out the door. I took my weapon and my LBE, and I just walked out, and I waited, making sure I shut the door, and I stood on the other side, holding my weapon, while guards stood on either side of the door, just kind of staring. It is what they were supposed to do, after all. It didn't take more than a few minutes, and eventually the door slid open, and I could see that the girls had cleaned up and changed their clothes. I tossed all the rags in one corner, along with the unused water and the cleanup rags, which smelled absolutely horrible, by the way. Most of it smelled like shit. Made me wonder the conditions that the girls were in. And our wonderful polar bear boy. But, yeah, we'll see how that goes. It wasn't 20 minutes later, of the girls continuing to feed themselves, where the door came open and we were instructed that the first round of training would begin. Well, let the games begin. As we walked out, I told the girls to please stay behind me. They looked confused at this, as they were more confused at the style of dress they were forced to wear. It wasn't easy to move in. It was just odd for them. But the only one who really didn't have a problem was Hana, as, well, she didn't have legs to trip over anything. Although she was more than willing to try and rip the kimono itself so that she could move a little easier. Thankfully, it wasn't a problem. As they went down the hall, I could see that the guards were giving them all sorts of strange looks. I had my gear on, of course, and I had Reniza on my side again. She once again was looking a little nervous at the whole thing as we walked along. With one arm, I held her hand. With the other arm, I held the pistol grip on my rifle. I'm not going to let this slide, pal. I kept thinking, as I looked at each of them, go ahead, try something. Reach for your sword. I dare you. I dare you. I'll put a double shot right through your nutsack, you son of a bitch. Each time I looked at them, that is the only things going through my mind was what type of bad things could I do with them. We were led to an exceptionally large area which was outdoors. Thankfully, it was a nice sunny day. Many of the girls had to shovel their eyes behind their hands, as suddenly being out in the daylight was a little much for their eyes. Again, I wondered what they had gone through the night before, and would have to ask them. However, for right now, I didn't have time to worry about it. The captain of the guards introduced himself just as soon as we got out into the open. Along with that was the rest of the folks that had been seriously cleaned up from the time that we got teleported in. They looked around at us, and a few of them were surprised and waved at the girls. I was surprised at this. I figured they wouldn't. Several of them, though, several of the boys, were not as well off as the rest. I looked and realized that they were also partially inhuman, and because of that, they were treated inhumanely. As the captain of the guard spoke, we listened close as he introduced us to all those who were going to train us. They were going to train us on all sorts of fighting techniques and survival skills that we would need in this world. That way, when we go to face off against the enemy, we would be able to survive on our own, even if all the soldiers behind us were lost. With this, I questioned it. I've spent enough times in units that pride themselves in losing people, and I am not going to do that again. I swore right there and then, no, you don't do that type of bullshit. Not a chance. Not with me around, you don't. With that, we saw the king come out, and of course everyone turned, and many of them bowed immediately to him. We all looked at them sideways, and many of those that had been cleaned up immediately bowed, but yeah, bowing's not something I do. If I'm bowing, I've been kicked in the balls, and I'm just leaning over a little bit. But then I'm going to kill you. Regardless of that, the king, well, basically looked at me sideways and realized that there wasn't much he could do. My status as a grand healer was something he couldn't push away. In all actuality, if I wanted to, I could take over the nation by claiming that the Grand Healer should rule the nation, and if not, the Grand Healer would heal no one ever again. But I figured now, why rock the boat at this point? Besides, if I deposed the king, I'd probably have to take on the queen, and what a bitch. Regardless of that, he looked at me a little bit and he winked. Dude, you're creepy. Then I saw a little bit of a grin on his face and realized, yeah, he just had a fun night with his wife, I guarantee that shit. Regardless of that, he explained how everything was going to go. Thank you all for being summoned here, and I swear we will all return you as soon as the danger has passed. This is the captain of the guard, Lord Smetheth, and he will be the one to train you all. Listen to him closely, and you will remain alive, and I will see you around. Smith was quick to show his training partners basically the best knights they had. All of them all decked out in their funky laminate armor. I had to laugh at that, as these bullets are going to go clean through if I decide to shoot them. Aside from that, I looked across and saw that each of them were trying to pair up more with humans than they were with the inhuman ones. I immediately told my folks, hey, we need to practice. They all looked at me weird, as I told them, we gotta survive here somehow, and learning how to fight is gonna be step one. They're gonna be covering food prices for now, so we're good. Everybody understand? With that, they nodded, and everyone got back to work, mostly pairing off with someone who has a similar ability, although some just did not have said ability. Keen was very quick to look at one of the training swords, and, well, it was kind of funny to watch him just simply run his fingers up the side, and I could see a fresh, clean, basically down to the molecule blade being formed. This did not go unnoticed by those who were training, as they screamed at him to don't do that. This was training, and it wouldn't do him any good if he got him killed or got one of the knights killed. Or worse, even though we had a grand healer nearby. What really pissed me off is one of them actually said, "Idiot boy!" and slapped him across the face with a backhand. I immediately rushed in, grabbed that soldier by the neck, and threw him face first into the concrete. Well, whatever suffices for concrete. The stone, I guess you could say, but it was very, very smooth. Definitely stopped his fall in a hurry. As he tried to get back to his feet, I ran over to Keen to see if he was hurt. Another swelling of his eye was starting, so I immediately put my hand on his neck and his shoulder so I could heal him up, which didn't take long at all, a few moments really. The knight looked over and cursed me out for protecting such a lowly creature. Lowly creature? Listen to me, you piece of shit. Do you have any idea what this man can do? Keen looked at me strange, as that I called him a man. I said, yeah, I've looked into your DNA. I know how old you are. He seemed to be a little put back at that. DNA? I'll explain later, but right now I just have to let you know I know you're older than you let on. The fact that you got this body here, as I tapped him on the shoulder, doesn't mean it's going to stop you from knowing what you know here, as I tapped him on the head. He then looked and realized I wasn't kidding. He couldn't play the fool anymore. He then picked up the sparring sword again, and he simply looked at the knight that had slapped him, held up the sword, and with the other hand, waited for him to come over. I backed away, raising my hands to show that I was not going to get in the way. The knight then pulled his sword, that goddamn katana. Ugh, jeez. Maybe I should call these guys samurai now that I think about it. But whatever. I'll just keep calling them knights just to be nice. He came at Keen, and Keen immediately morphed the sword into a shield and blocked it. With that, the soldier was, what the hell? Immediately morphed the metal around the katana and locked it in place so they couldn't draw it away. And with that, he reached under to the bottom of the piece of metal and seemed to morph a dagger out of half of the metal, while the first half held on to the katana. He yanked in as close as he could and put the knife right next to the guy's groin. He didn't slice anything, mind you, but it definitely got his attention. I smiled, trying not to laugh at the idea that Keen had some serious training on his belt. But for what, I have no idea. I don't know what type of fighting style that was, but he immediately had mastered whatever type of power he actually had. I'm guessing between beatings he had figured out what he could do and figured something out. Although I'm pretty sure once that collar was on, it didn't make it easy. Of course, I just realized standing right there that he had started to practice with that bowl. Maybe he had figured something out. It was amazing to see. With that, the captain of the guard came up, cursed out his subordinate, and walked over to Keen and congratulated him on beating the second best swordsman they had. With that, he offered to face off against Keen, drawing not only one but two katanas. Don't these guys know about shields? And said, "You are not authorized to use shields." What? I screamed, "Bullshit!" With that, everyone looked over. No, he's going to use whatever he's able to use, just like you can use that. Don't tell somebody they can't use something in battle. What the... Seriously, where's your brain at, mon capitan? Smith just looked at me strange. He didn't understand mon capitan, but he understood that I was mocking him. He then turned to me, raising one of his katanas and pointing, "Do you think you could hold yourself against me?" "Yeah, without those fancy weapons." I looked at him and said, "Oh yeah." I took my PC off, pulled the weapon over top of my head, and started taking some of my gear off. I eventually had everything off to the side to include my body armor, and I walked over. I picked up a simple sparring sword, checked to make sure it was dull, and got ready. But just as we got ready to go, I said, whoa, one moment. Went back over to the box, and I pulled a second sword out. He looked at me strange, like how would I know how to use two? I didn't have the heart to tell him, as this is what one of my senseis had taught me. He said, never go with just one weapon. You always have more than one. I figured he meant that I could just punch somebody with my spare hand. But nope, once you have your hand on that sword, you don't let go ever. Unless your hand comes off. But with that came the clanging of metal as we both went towards each other, me with a sparring sword and him with his actual sharp one, so I had to be much more careful. I'll give him this, the man was good. He was really good. To the point where I was stuck defending the entire time. Keen was watching, and I could see the look in his eyes of sheer terror as one of the swipes came in and almost got me right on the neck. But I was thankfully able to block it. Spinning around, I tried to get him again. Nope. He's good. He's very good. After about 30 seconds to a minute more after that, the battle simply stopped. And we looked at each other and smiled. So, does this mean I'm going to be your sparring partner from here on out? Indeed, he simply said, and then proceeded to sheath his swords. With that, nobody else gave us any more crap. They saw that several of the girls were having trouble maneuvering with weapons, especially against their much older, larger, and stronger counterparts. That was, with the exception of, well, our dragon girls. Come to find out, they're a lot stronger than they look. Being that they're part dragon, this shouldn't have been a shock to anybody. Especially when they started realizing that they could use their lightning ability to charge up the swords and use them to basically shock the living piss out of whoever they struck. This made short work. I told them instead of using swords, you should just use a pole. That did make much more sense. And they started to as well. When it came down to it, a lot of people were having trouble with our Kitsune girls, as they kept jumping away to different areas. In one case, Shira thought it would be funny to teleport onto the guy's face and wrap her legs around. I completely lost it laughing when all I heard was yeah, I was done. I almost peed myself laughing at that point, as she had the goofiest grin on her face. Seriously, it would have been better had the whole teleportation thing from your world not made you a lot younger, because I didn't want to see a 13 or 14-year-old doing that shit to somebody who looks like he was 25. Though funny, still disturbing. Good thing I got a really fucked up sense of humor. As they continued to spar and change everything, our wonderful cat girls showed that they had the ultra awareness that made it impossible for them to be struck. It seemed as though they were getting on a handle of that one a lot faster than anyone else. Considering it's basically just an extension of their own senses, it made perfect sense. While they jumped around and made all sorts of holy hell for those training, well, I was kind of busy. You see, nobody goes through training without some bumps, bruises, slices, and bleeding a little bit. So I kept having to use my abilities to constantly heal everybody. It didn't matter. Our wonderful snow girl, I felt really bad for, as she was a very, very, very timid girl. She kept her eyes down almost the entire time, and when it was told that she had to spar, she simply raised a block of ice around her, thick enough that they almost couldn't get through. Almost. The blade came around from their version of a halberd, with that huge honking blade on it that looks almost like a scimitar. That thing came with enough force that it actually got through the ice and sliced right into her leg. She screamed and fell down. I ran up to the guy screaming, "What the hell are you doing?" realizing that the dumbass forgot to grab a training blade like he was supposed to. It didn't take long for me to heal her wounds, but I was still absolutely astounded how bleach white she was. I'm amazed she didn't burst into flames out there in the training grounds. With that, I did look over and realized that our snake girl was using her hypnosis abilities to simply slow down those coming at her. This was amazing, absolutely astounding. Unfortunately for her, many of those that were in the knights also had an ability to bounce this away. They were able to fight it off. Something about they've dealt with hypnosis before and had some sort of training. Or, in one case, they had a pendant given to him by his wife. This was imbued with some sort of power that stopped hypnosis, and it made it difficult for her to actually be able to slow him down. So, it's going to take a little more training. One of the biggest surprises was our wonderful dog girl, Rena. She was in the corner for a long time, not thinking that she would be in any way, shape, or form helpful. I asked her if she could do anything with the dirt. She said, I think so, sure. Like this? She simply placed her hands on the ground and began to split the earth down the middle. At least a 6 or 7 foot wide gash ended up on the ground. A huge fissure opened up from one side to the other, shaking the living crap out of everybody. As everyone fell over, they realized that a few of them had fallen in. She all of a sudden started shaking as she was afraid that she had done something really bad. Everyone pulled the knights and everybody else out and realized that she was a lot more powerful than they gave her credit for. Though she'd have to get a handle on that. With that, everybody was around the time of lunch. We knew that because, of course, they brought it to us. They wanted us out there training as much as possible. To my absolute shock, Rena was able to grow plants at an accelerated rate. And when I say accelerated, I mean within about 10 minutes, it went from bare ground to producing vegetables. I mean, not a lot, mind you. She said it was completely draining just to get that many. As I picked her up to move her, I kind of checked her stats, so to speak. As I looked into her body, yeah, her energy reserves were down in the shithouse. I was actually amazed she was still conscious. The rest of the day continued on like this after the meal, just constantly going in, practicing their different magical abilities along with their own physical attacks. Working with anything from a sword to a shield, which they actually had to build one, to spears, bows, and all that other fun stuff. Using their abilities to try and match 2, 3, 4, sometimes 7 knights at a time. And that kept me very, very busy. I got tired of them constantly yelling out, "Master Healer, Master Healer, Master of Healing, the Healing Master, come forth," and crap like that. Eventually, at the end of the day, as we were finally about ready to retire, I just yelled to everybody, hey, from here on out, if you need me, just call me Doc, okay? I might not have been a medic back in the day, but I'm your doc now, okay? Everybody good? And with that, they simply shook their heads up and down, or left and right. Again, different type of cultures. It was going to be a long, long few weeks. However, there was one other thing that was bugging me the entire time. Those that hadn't been forced into chains. I was wondering, how were they being treated? As we walked, I saw they were forced into another area, being pushed by guards. I immediately told the guards to knock it the fuck off. And then I asked how they were being treated. They looked at the guards kind of scared. I said, "Oh, hell no." Reached out and grabbed one by the hand and realized that their body had been kicked the crap out of. A couple of bruised ribs, slight internal bleeding, nothing the body couldn't handle on its own, but I decided to give it a little bit of a boost. And by that, I mean I fully healed them. Immediately after that, I told them, "Don't worry, I'll take care of it." And I charged myself straight into the dining hall where the queen and king were dining, and I immediately walked up and screamed, "What the fuck were you thinking?" "Excuse me? How dare you rush in the dining hall? I don't want to hear it," I said. "You brought us here to fight your war, to be the big guns to your army, and you're treating our people like that?" "What are you talking about?" the queen said. "Those that don't look like us. You're treating them like shit. I just healed somebody who your guards kicked the shit out of all night. So you want to explain this?" "Well, as you know, humans are the dominant species here, and all others are there to serve us. We may do what we wish to them." "Is that what you think? Is that what... What?" The queen immediately popped up. "We all know what you've done with the slaves as soon as you got them. We had to change their clothes and wash them up afterwards. So you cannot tell us that we cannot do the same. You think that little of me, huh? You think I would do that? Did you see how young they are?" "It does not matter how young they are. They are slaves, servants, and you can simply tell them to do what you wish. They must obey, or their collars will give them great pain, or eventually kill them if they dissuade anything from you." "Oh, jeez," I said as I rubbed my head. Like, oh, God, these guys are idiots. "Tell you what, your royal pain in my ass." The king did not like when I said that. "Here's what you're going to do. You're going to treat them well, even those not directly under my care, or I'm going to leave, and you can fight this war without me. See how far you get without a master healer at your side." With that, they suddenly widened their eyes and worried. Was all they got out before I said, "And I am not taking any sort of excuse. What type of idiot tells their soldiers they have to run on no rations, no water, no gear? You believe yourself better than them, then prove it. Not by violence, but by showing that you are magnanimous. That is how you truly show that you are a great leader." And a great leader back in my world always used to say, "Treat your soldiers as your own sons, and they will follow you always, even unto death." Knowing I butchered it, he didn't know that. But the lesson seemed to sink in. The captain of the guard himself even lowered his head even a little bit, realizing what I said was true. A few of the guards had already started reaching for their swords, but they knew if they slashed at me, well, I just put a bullet through them, as I was still grasping onto my rifle strapped to my chest. "All right, Master Healer. We will do as you ask. However, I expect you to do exactly what we demand of you." "You mean what you request?" "Yes, what we request of you." Being forced to say the word request obviously was like chewing on rubber covered in acid. But he said it anyway. The entire dining hall was still confused. I looked over at each of them as they looked back at me. "Anything else, Master Healer?" "No, nothing." I simply turned towards the wife, raised my hat just slightly. "Ma'am." They were confused at this, but I can't forget where my original manners come from. And as I walked towards the entrance, I saw the guards opening it for me. But as I walked out, I stopped. "By the way, it's not Master Healer. Just call me Doc."